It is a choice for him to implement extremist policies that have taken the lives of 2,500 British Columbians every single year. Since the NDP has asked him to reverse course on his and formerly their radical policy, 22 British Columbians have died of drug overdoses. But he continues to allow those drugs to kill the people in our hospitals and on our public transit. When will we put an end to this wacko policy by this wacko Prime Minister?
All right, there you go. That's some of it. And then, of course, you may have heard on the news, Jason played the part where they actually kicked Pierre Poilievre out. So we're going to try to, I guess we're going to wait for the line to get back here. This is what happened today. So Pierre Poilievre, you heard that little clip there. I guess it was one thing to refer to the policy as wacko and another one to actually refer to the Prime Minister as wacko. And by the way, after that happened, all the Conservatives sort of followed Pierre Poilievre out of the House. It was kind of like the Pied Piper. Tom Mulcair is standing by. Our feature is brought to you by Guaranteed Industries, reminding you, of course, when it comes to heating or cooling, they're the folks to call, have been for more than 75 years. They are a Lennox Premier dealer, 514-342-3400. So, Tom, as I said when I teed this up just before 5 o'clock, so much for collegiality in the House of Commons, huh?
Yeah, and so much for Greg Fergus as Speaker of the House of Commons. This was, I think, the most shameful display of partisanship I have ever seen in my career, either in Quebec City or in Ottawa. Just for the record, I was elected 3 times to Quebec City and 4 times in Ottawa, and I have never seen this. I've seen partisan behavior by speakers, depending on the instance. But this, I mean, to have the leader of the opposition use a word that is, on a scale of 1 to 10 of bad words, It's like a 2.25, right?
Yeah.
Wacko. And it's certainly, and Poilievre gave him lots of opening. He says, well, I withdraw it and I replace it with the words I mentioned before. He was giving Fergus more than enough room to do his job. And he is the leader of the opposition. He is part of that institution. And Trudeau himself had just stood up and waved his finger at Poilievre. He's a spineless, he's a this, he's a that. So Fergus, you remember when he was caught making a very partisan video for the Liberals after he'd become Speaker? Yep. Everybody wanted his head. I defended him. I said, look, it's a rookie error. He should be allowed to make one mistake. Now he's going to have to show that he's capable of being nonpartisan. Today he showed just the opposite. Greg Fergus showed that he is totally partisan, liberal, hiding behind that black robe that's supposed to be like the black and white jersey of a referee. He's supposed to be neutral. He's not supposed to become a player in the field. Today, he completely blew it, and it's a shame. But he's got to go. And I saw right away the Bloc Québécois and the NDP jumping up. Anything they can do to reduce Poilievre and the Conservatives, they're going to do. So there was no question that they're actually going to be able to vote him out. But now that the Conservatives have walked out, they're going to have to decide on what terms they come back in. And as far as I'm concerned, as somebody who stood up, and I was counted. I mean, I said the same thing in French TV and radio and in English. I stood up strongly and defended Fergus for that blunder that would have normally cost him his job. I said he's allowed to make one mistake.
Right.
This shows for me he's totally partisan, and he should not be in that position anymore.
So this is not going to be okay to say, oh, just another rookie mistake.
No, because how are the Conservatives supposed to believe anything that happens with him now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can you say that you get to expel the leader of the opposition for a word like wacko? And I heard the distinction you were making before, and it's an important one. You're saying, well, saying this policy is wacko, but saying the wacko Prime Minister, he said, I'll withdraw it, and I'll replace it with the things I said before.
Extremist, Fergus, I think, was one of those, right? Extremist was one of those words?
Yeah. And radical. And it doesn't matter. Fergus had more than enough out at that point to pull the plug. He was clearly on a mission, clearly intended the result that he got, trying to give a black eye to Poilievre and the Conservatives.
Yeah.
I think it's shameful. I have never seen such partisan behavior from such a key element of our parliamentary institution, the Speaker, ever in my career.
I guess this gives a little bit of oxygen to all the Poilievre supporters as well to kind of point a finger now and say, see, this is what he's dealing with in the House.
You know what? You're completely right on that too, Aaron. And I'll tell you, I saw a newspaper article that was going around today, from one of the main, sources, and one of the main news agencies, and it was shamefully partisan, pro-liberal. It went something like this: Poilievre refuses to denounce white supremacists. This was in the wake of some questions yesterday where the Liberals were pitching back at him. Oh, yeah, but, Jones, this complete whack job American conspiracy theorist, whom they've decided is also a white supremacist, they're trying to tie that to Poilievre. And I said, okay, well, that failed at question period, but it didn't fail because the newspaper article that went around, again, by one of the key sources of news in Canada, went around saying, no, he refused to distance himself and to reproach white supremacists. And I'm sort of going, okay, penalty flags all over the field. This is absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. This isn't journalism. This is just hacking away at a political opponent. But this is what the Conservatives put up with. They put up with it from the CBC. They put up with it from the mainstream press. Do they deserve to get punched once in a while? Of course, everybody does in politics. But it is absolutely true, today anyway, that they were the object of discriminatory behavior on behalf of the Speaker of the House of Commons, who went after them much harder than he went after anybody else. And as far as I'm concerned, it was telegraphed in advance. People had been predicting that he was too partisan for the job. Today, he proved they were right.
Let me move on from that and ask a question today. And I talked about this earlier. So this whole, since we're on the topic of Pierre Poilievre, this idea of trying to introduce the notwithstanding clause, we spoke to Ontario Police yesterday,
yes,
to the association, and brought this up. And of course, as soon as you hear the word notwithstanding, at least if you're Yves-François Blanchet, your ears catch on fire and you suggest, well, if they're going to use it there, then clearly there's no issue with Quebec using it here. It right. does send a very, very bad message, does it not?
Well, for people who don't think it should have ever been in the Constitution to begin with, of course. And I happen to be one of those people. I think that we made a mistake in putting the notwithstanding clause in there, allowing provincial governments to just say, well, by the way, your freedom of speech, freedom of religion, like Bill 21, freedom of assembly, we're just going to get rid of that, and we don't have to justify it. What Poilievre was on about was actually something quite more detailed. He wanted to talk about getting tougher. It's what he calls catch and release. I mean, it's not arguable that we let people out far too easily on bail, because then they just simply go on to reoffend, and that was not thought through at the time. So Poilievre went further. He was not just in front of the Ontario Police. He was in front of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. It's one of these big annual things to which all party leaders usually get invited. And Poilievre just dug in and he gave his speech, and he said, we're going to make things tougher, and to put it beyond the scope of always going back to court and questioning. He started with the case of Bissonnette, the young man in Quebec City who carried out that mass murder in a mosque in Quebec City, and he said it was outrageous that they weren't able to get more than one sentence on him for the number of people that he killed. And he has said, and that was based on the Charter. So Poilievre had said, if that's based on the Charter, then I'm going to be able to say that this applies notwithstanding the Charter of Rights, because I want to be able to go after a mass murderer who, in essence, I think he should have been charged with terrorism, frankly, killed people because of their religious beliefs, killed them in a mosque. And we saw in London, Ontario, that person was actually charged and convicted as well of terrorist acts. So I think that Poilievre is allowed to have a position that might be different from mine or anybody else's, because it's a reasoned position, even if I disagree with his reasoning. Whereas what Yves-François Blanchet is saying is it's like pinning the tail on the donkey. You just walk around with your notwithstanding clause, and you can pin it on anything, anytime. Well, no, sorry. That's what doesn't work, and that's why the Supreme Court's going to have to sort this thing out.
Yeah, and this will be a very interesting decision when it does happen. I want to ask one last thing, Tom, which struck me as interesting today. It didn't get much press so far. In presenting the budget today, right, the federal government basically detached the capital gains tax issue from the rest of the budget. And what's that about? Is that typically done?
No. And it means that they're starting to look at some aspects of it that are coming out bit by bit. I'll give you one example. That for at least 15 years, systematically at finance, you'll do a gendered analysis of the effects of budget measures. What does that mean? Well, women live longer than men, for example, and so are there aspects of this that are going to hit women longer term more than men? And with regard to the capital gains tax, yes, because if you're a woman and you're working as a doctor, you're otherwise self-employed, and you buy a fourplex apartment as your retirement, and all of a sudden the government's taxing away a whole bunch more of it. Well, first of all, it's retroactive, and second of all, who's going to get hit the hardest and longest term? Women. So that's the type of thing they should be looking at. It's also a disguised inheritance tax. It's also creating a gold rush for people who want to buy cottages, whether it's in Muskoka or in the Laurentians, because they've got between now and June 25th to unload their country house at the old rate. Otherwise, they've increased by 33% the part that has to be brought into income. So these are big honking questions that the Liberals didn't look at properly. They were looking mostly to have a fight with the Conservatives and try to tag the Conservatives as being in favor of defending rich people. And what's starting to come out is the Liberals just didn't do their homework. So I'm not surprised to see it not in there. They're saying, no, it's going to come. It's going to come. But I think that they're going to be retooling it completely, because what they came up with on Budget Day was absolutely unfair.
Do you think, I mean, given that they've done this now, what does this mean? Does this mean they introduce it in a week, in a month? Does it make a difference?
Well, we have a funny system here in Canada, unlike the Americans, where, you have things that are larded on to the budget, and you have literally sometimes hundreds of pages of little tiny add-ons to keep every single member of Congress on side for the budget, and then it can be adopted or not adopted, and it goes on and on and on. Here, it has to be considered sacrosanct that it's enacted as is from the day it is read at 4 p.m. Tuesday 2 weeks ago by Chrystia Freeland. That's the way our system works. And what we're seeing now is on this one, somebody's going, what do we do with this? And I think that's the thinking that's going on right now. Is there a way to patch this thing? Are they going to be able to get the $19 billion? The whole budget hinges on a $19 billion tax increase. Trudeau came in 2015. His first budget in 2016 included a huge tax increase. And to get that money, and he still had a huge deficit that year. So in 2024, what's his model? More taxes. He needs $19 billion in new tax revenue to only have a $40 billion deficit this year on top of everything else. It's worth bearing in mind that Trudeau has accumulated more debt for Canadians than every prime minister in the previous 150 some odd years of Confederation before him. Or 48 when he came in, 148 years of Confederation. So that's what the reality is, Aaron. Trudeau, this is his model of public administration, of the public purse. More debt and more taxation at the same time. And it's untenable, and that's where we are.
Tom, you sure you don't want to run anymore?
No, it's done, man.
You sure?
I'm having too much fun talking with you.
Okay. By the way, can you tell me what Jagmeet Singh is up to? Why is he still playing this game? Well, we're not sure we support the budget yet. I mean, that was 2 weeks ago. I mean, what's going on?
I don't think that there's anybody in Canada who believes that the NDP is not voting for the budget. So I don't know why.
So why play the game?
Well, I think that maybe he's hoping to get a little bit more money in the pot so he can claim that he got something out of Trudeau for the budget. I don't think that there's anything coming at all. We'll see.
Very well.